Jake Rodriguez's farm hadn't turned a profit in 3 years when the woman in the rental car pulled up to his gate on that dusty September morning. His crops were failing, his equipment was breaking down, and the bank letters were piling up on his kitchen table. He had no idea that letting this stranger borrow his old tractor would transform not just his struggling operation, but the entire future of farming technology. She stalled his machine 3 times, asked questions that seemed impossible to answer, then vanished without explanation. But when she returned months later with investors and a prototype that could change everything, Jake discovered that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships can bridge the gap between tradition and innovation, between survival and success. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun cast long shadows across Jake Rodriguez's drought-stricken fields as he surveyed the damage that 3 consecutive seasons of poor weather had inflicted on his family's century-old farm in rural Gray, Nebraska. The corn stalks stood barely waist-high, their leaves brown and curled despite his best efforts to coax life from soil that seemed determined to reject everything he planted. His grandfather's words echoed in his memory as he walked the fence line, checking for breaks that he couldn't afford to repair properly. The land will provide if you know how to listen to what it needs. But lately, Jake felt like he'd lost the ability to hear whatever the land was trying to tell him. At 34, Jake had inherited more than just the 800-acre spread that had supported 3 generations of Rodriguez men. He'd also inherited debt that grew larger each season, equipment that broke down with increasing frequency, and the weight of expectations from a community that had watched his family succeed for decades. His father had passed away 5 years earlier, leaving Jake to navigate the complexities of modern farming without the guidance that previous generations had relied upon, and every decision felt like it carried the potential for catastrophic failure. The sound of a car engine approaching broke through his morning contemplation, and Jake looked up to see a small sedan making its way down the gravel road that led to his farmhouse. The vehicle was clearly a rental, its pristine exterior standing out against the dusty landscape like a business card in a toolbox. Jake wiped his hands on his work jeans and walked toward the house, curious about who might be visiting his remote operation at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. The woman who emerged from the sedan was probably in her early 30s. With shoulder-length black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and clothing that suggested she'd made some effort to dress appropriately for a farm visit while still maintaining a professional appearance. She wore dark jeans that looked new, boots that had never seen actual farm work, and a button-down shirt that was clean enough to suggest she'd changed clothes specifically for this meeting. "Mr. Rodriguez?" she called out as she approached, extending her hand with the confident gesture of someone accustomed to introducing herself to strangers. "I'm Maya Patel. I called yesterday about possibly renting some equipment for a research project." Jake remembered the phone call, though he'd been distracted by a broken irrigation pump and hadn't paid careful attention to the details. A woman had explained that she was conducting agricultural research in the area and needed access to farming equipment for field testing, offering to pay daily rental fees that would help with his immediate cash flow problems. "Right, the tractor rental," Jake said, shaking her hand and noting the firm grip that suggested strength despite her academic appearance. "I have to warn you, the equipment isn't exactly state-of-the-art. Most of it's been in my family for longer than I've been alive." Maya's smile was genuine and carried a hint of excitement that seemed disproportionate to the prospect of operating decades-old farm machinery. "Actually, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I need to test some concepts with the kind of equipment that most farmers actually use, not the expensive new models that only large commercial operations can afford. As they walked toward the equipment barn, Jake found himself curious about Maya's background and what kind of research required hands-on experience with farming equipment. She asked detailed questions about his operation, the challenges he faced with weather and soil conditions, and the economic pressures that made it difficult to invest in newer technology. "How long have you been farming this land?" Maya asked as Jake pulled back the sliding door to reveal his collection of tractors, implements, and machinery in various states of repair. "My whole life, really," Jake replied, running his hand along the fender of his main tractor, a 1987 John Deere that had been his father's pride and joy. My grandfather bought this land in 1952. My father expanded the operation in the 80s, and I've been trying to keep it all together since he passed. Maya examined the tractor with intense interest, walking around it slowly and taking notes on a tablet that she pulled from her shoulder bag. She asked about engine specifications, hydraulic systems, and the types of implements the tractor could operate. Questions that suggested a technical background that seemed unusual for someone conducting agricultural research. Would it be possible for me to operate this today? Maya asked, gesturing toward the John Deere. I'd be happy to pay the daily rate we discussed, and I promise to be careful with your equipment. Jake hesitated, not because he doubted Maya's ability to pay, but because he'd never let a complete stranger operate his primary tractor without supervision. The Dr. Patricia Webb, the lead researcher for the federal program, arrived at Jake's farm on a crisp October morning with a team of graduate students and extension specialists who had been studying their partnership for months through academic papers and conference presentations. Jake found himself in the unusual position of hosting distinguished visitors who treated his farming operation as a case study worthy of detailed analysis and documentation. What we're seeing here, Dr. Webb explained to her research team as they toured Jake's enhanced equipment barn, represents a fundamental shift in how agricultural innovation happens. Instead of technology being developed in corporate laboratories and then marketed to farmers, we have an example of technology emerging from genuine farmer-researcher collaboration. End quote. Jake listened as Dr. Webb described his partnership with Maya in academic terms that made their practical working relationship sound like a revolutionary breakthrough in innovation methodology. While he appreciated the recognition, he found it slightly surreal to hear their straightforward collaboration analyzed, as if it were a complex theoretical framework, rather than simply two people helping each other solve problems. The key insight, Dr. Webb continued, addressing her students, is that Mr. Rodriguez possessed tacit knowledge about farming operations that couldn't be captured through traditional research methods. Ms. Patel's breakthrough was recognizing that this knowledge represented essential data for developing effective agricultural technology. Maya had flown in from the company's new headquarters in California to participate in the federal demonstration, and Jake noticed that she seemed as amused as he was by the academic interpretation of their partnership. During a break in the formal presentations, she pulled him aside for a private conversation about the implications of their newfound status as a model for agricultural innovation. Sometimes I think they're making this more complicated than it actually was, Maya said with a smile that suggested she shared Jake's bemusement about the scholarly attention their collaboration had attracted. We just figured out how to listen to each other and build something together that neither of us could have created alone. That's where I keep trying to tell them, Jake replied, gesturing toward the group of researchers who were documenting every aspect of his farming operation with the intensity of anthropologists studying a newly discovered culture. But apparently listening to each other is now considered an innovative methodology worthy of federal funding. The government designation brought new responsibilities that Jake hadn't anticipated when he agreed to host the demonstration program. He found himself participating in policy discussions about agricultural technology development, providing input on federal funding priorities, and serving as a farmer representative on committees that were designing programs to promote innovation partnerships across rural America. Your experience has convinced policymakers that farmer involvement in technology development should be a requirement for federal research funding, explained James Morrison, the USDA program director who had championed Jake's farm as a demonstration site. We're proposing new guidelines that would require technology companies to demonstrate meaningful farmer collaboration before receiving government support. Jake felt both honored and slightly overwhelmed by the policy implications of his partnership with Maya. The idea that their personal collaboration might influence how the federal government approached agricultural research funding was simultaneously exciting and daunting, representing a level of responsibility he had never sought but felt obligated to fulfill conscientiously. The demonstration program attracted visitors from around the world, as international agricultural development organizations sought to understand how the farmer-researcher collaboration model might be adapted for developing countries facing food security challenges. Jake found himself hosting delegations from Africa, Asia, and South America, sharing his experience with farmers and researchers who were dealing with very different crops and climate conditions, but similar needs for appropriate technology solutions. The principles we discovered here, Jake explained to a group of agricultural extension workers from Kenya, seem to apply regardless of what crops you're growing or what technology you're using. The key is creating genuine partnerships where farmers and researchers learn from each other, instead of one group trying to teach the other. These international exchanges enrich Jake's understanding of global agriculture, while reinforcing his appreciation for the universal challenges that farmers faced when trying to balance traditional practices with modern innovations. He began incorporating international perspectives into his consulting work, helping American farmers understand how their challenges connected to broader global trends in agricultural development. Maya's company had grown into a major force in agricultural technology, with operations on 4 continents and partnerships with leading equipment manufacturers, seed companies, and agricultural research institutions. However, she maintained her commitment to farmer-centered design principles, insisting that all international expansion followed the collaborative development model she had pioneered with Jake. What we learned in Nebraska has become our template for every new market we enter, Maya explained during a company-wide video conference that Jake joined from his farm office. We always start by finding local farmers who are willing to teach us about their specific conditions and needs. Then we adapt our technology to enhance their existing expertise. The success of this approach had made Maya's company one of the most rapidly growing agricultural technology firms in the world, with valuation estimates that seemed almost incomprehensible to Jake when he considered that it had all started with a woman who couldn't operate his tractor without stalling the engine multiple times. Jake's role within the company had evolved to Chief Agricultural Innovation Officer, a position that involved overseeing farmer partnerships across all international markets, while maintaining his advisory relationship with the original Nebraska operation. The compensation from this role, combined with his consulting practice and the continued profitability of his expanded farming operation, had created wealth that extended far beyond his personal needs. I never imagined that helping someone learn to drive a tractor would lead to this kind of financial success, Jake reflected during an interview with Agricultural Business Weekly. But more importantly, I never imagined that our partnership would create opportunities for so many other farmers to benefit from technology that actually enhances their expertise instead of replacing it. The wealth generated by his partnership with Maya enabled Jake to establish a foundation focused on supporting rural education and agricultural innovation programs. The Rodriguez Foundation provided scholarships for students from farming families to study agricultural engineering, funded research projects that emphasized farmer-researcher collaboration, and supported community programs that strengthened rural economies. My grandfather always taught me that success creates obligations to help others, Jake explained during the foundation's inaugural grant ceremony. The opportunities that came from my partnership with Maya have given me resources that should be used to create similar opportunities for other people in rural communities. The Foundation's first major initiative was establishing agricultural innovation centers at 3 rural high schools, providing students with access to precision farming technology and mentorship from working farmers who were integrating modern tools with traditional practices. Jake personally visited each center, sharing his story and encouraging young people to consider careers that combined agricultural knowledge with technological innovation. The future of farming belongs to people who understand both the land and the technology, Jake told a group of high school students during the opening ceremony for the first Innovation Center. What Maya taught me is that the best innovations come from people who respect both farming wisdom and technological possibility. The education initiatives attracted attention from major universities, leading to partnerships that created new degree programs combining agricultural science with technology development and entrepreneurship. Jake served on advisory boards for several of these programs, helping to design curricula that emphasized hands-on experience with working farmers, alongside theoretical knowledge. Dr. Michael Chen, from Iowa State University's Agricultural Engineering Department, explained the significance of these new educational approaches during a conference on agricultural innovation. What Jake Rodriguez and Maya Patel demonstrated is that technological innovation in agriculture requires deep understanding of both farming practices, and engineering principles. Our new programs are designed to produce graduates who can bridge these different areas of expertise." End quote. The educational partnerships led to research collaborations that extended the farmer-researcher model beyond technology development into areas such as climate adaptation, soil health management, and sustainable farming practices. Jake's farm became a living laboratory where students and faculty could study the integration of traditional farming knowledge with modern scientific methods. Every semester, we have graduate students working on projects that combine Jake's practical knowledge with university research capabilities, explained Dr. Sarah Williams, who directed the Berect Agricultural Innovation Program at the State University. The students learn that good research requires understanding the real-world context where their innovations will be applied. These research partnerships produced practical innovations that benefited farmers throughout the region. From improved soil testing methods that incorporated traditional soil assessment techniques, to weather prediction systems that combined meteorological data with farmer observations about local climate patterns, Jake's willingness to share his knowledge and land for research purposes had created a model for university-farmer collaboration that was being replicated across the country. The success of the educational and research initiatives inspired Jake to expand his foundation's mission to include international development programs that brought the farmer-researcher collaboration model to developing countries. Working with international aid organizations, the foundation supported projects that connected local farmers with appropriate technology while respecting traditional agricultural knowledge and practices. What we've learned is that sustainable agricultural development happens when outside technology enhances local expertise instead of replacing it, Jake explained during a presentation to the International Brass Development Association. Our foundation supports projects that follow this principle, regardless of what crops are involved or what technology is being introduced. One of the foundation's most successful international projects involved working with coffee farmers in Guatemala to integrate precision agriculture techniques with traditional cultivation methods that had been developed over generations. The project increased yields and income while preserving cultural practices and environmental sustainability, demonstrating that the collaboration model could work across very different agricultural contexts. The principles that Jake and Maya discovered apply everywhere that people are trying to improve farming practices, explained Maria Santos, the foundation's international program director. Whether we're working with corn farmers in Nebraska or coffee farmers in Guatemala, the key is creating genuine partnerships where local knowledge and outside technology enhance each other. The international work reinforced Jake's appreciation for the universal challenges that farmers faced, while deepening his understanding of how local conditions and cultural contexts shaped agricultural practices. He began incorporating these global perspectives into his domestic consulting work, helping American farmers understand how their innovations might be adapted for international markets. Maya's company had become a global leader in agricultural technology, with products being used on farms in over 40 countries and partnerships with major agricultural organizations worldwide. However, the company maintained its commitment to farmer-centered development, with every new product being tested extensively with working farmers before reaching commercial markets. Our success has always been based on genuine respect for farmer expertise, Maya said during her keynote address at the World Agricultural Technology Conference. As we've grown, we've had to work harder to maintain that focus, but it remains the foundation of everything we do. The conference, attended by agricultural leaders from around the world, featured Jake as the opening speaker, recognizing his role in demonstrating how farmer-researcher partnerships could transform both individual operations and entire industries. His presentation emphasized the importance of maintaining farmer autonomy and expertise in an era of rapid technological change. Technology should make good farmers better, not make farming easier for people who don't understand agriculture, Jake told the international audience. The difference between these approaches determines whether innovation strengthens rural communities or undermines them. Jake's presentation was followed by a panel discussion featuring farmers from 6 countries who had participated in Maya's collaborative development programs, each sharing how the farmer-centered approach had enhanced their operations while respecting their local knowledge and practices. The diversity of their experiences demonstrated the universal applicability of the collaboration model, while highlighting the importance of adapting technology to local conditions. What Jake and Maya created in Nebraska has influenced how we think about agricultural development everywhere, explained Dr. Robert Thompson from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the West. United Nations. Their model has become a template for sustainable technology transfer that strengthens rather than displaces local farming expertise. The recognition at the international conference led to new opportunities for Jake to influence global agricultural policy, including participation in United Nations discussions about sustainable BAS, development goals, and climate adaptation strategies. His practical experience with technology integration provided valuable perspective for policymakers who were designing programs to support agricultural development in developing countries. Farmers around the world face similar challenges, even when they're growing different crops in different climates, Jake observed during a UN panel discussion on agricultural resilience. The solutions need to be adapted to local conditions, but the principle of enhancing farmer expertise with appropriate technology applies universally. These international policy discussions convinced Jake that his partnership with Maya had implications that extended far beyond their individual success to questions about how technological development could support global food security while respecting cultural diversity and environmental sustainability. He began dedicating more time to these broader issues, viewing his foundation's work as part of a larger movement toward more equitable and sustainable agricultural development. The 8th year of his partnership with Maya brought new challenges as climate change created weather patterns that tested both their technology and their collaborative approach to innovation. Extreme weather events, shifting precipitation patterns, and unprecedented temperature variations required constant adaptation of farming practices and technology systems. Climate change is forcing us to innovate faster than we ever have before, Maya explained during one of their quarterly strategy meetings. But it's also proving that the farmer-researcher collaboration model is essential for developing solutions that work under constantly changing conditions. Jake's farm became a testing ground for climate adaptation technologies that combined real-time environmental monitoring with traditional farmer knowledge about weather patterns and crop responses. The extreme conditions provided opportunities to refine their technology platform while demonstrating the value of integrating scientific data with experienced farmer observations. The sensors can tell us what's happening right now, Jake explained to a group of climate researchers studying agricultural adaptation strategies. But understanding what it means for farming decisions requires knowledge that comes from decades of experience with weather variability. The technology enhances that knowledge but can't replace it. The climate adaptation work attracted support from environmental organizations and government agencies concerned about agricultural resilience, leading to new funding for research and demonstration projects. Jake found himself at the center of discussions about how farming practices and technology could evolve to meet the challenges of a changing climate while maintaining productivity and profitability. What Jake has demonstrated, said Dr. Jennifer Martinez from the National Climate Research Center, is that agricultural adaptation to climate change requires both advanced technology and deep understanding of local farming conditions. His partnership with Maya provides a model for how these different types of knowledge can be integrated effectively, end quote. As Jake reflected on the journey that had transformed his life from struggling farmer to international advocate for agricultural innovation, he recognized that the most significant outcome had been demonstrating that individual relationships built on mutual respect and shared learning could create changes that extended far beyond the original participants to influence entire industries and global policy discussions. The woman who had struggled to operate his tractor on that September morning had become not just a business partner, but a catalyst for changes that touched farmers, researchers, and policymakers around the world. Their collaboration had proven that innovation thrived when it emerged from genuine partnerships between people with different types of expertise who were willing to learn from each other. Jake's story had become more than a business success. It had evolved into a demonstration of how individual acts of generosity and patience could create opportunities that benefited entire communities and, quote, industries while addressing some of the most pressing challenges facing global agriculture in an era of rapid technological and environmental change. The 9th year of their partnership brought a new milestone when Maya's company went public, with Jake holding a significant equity stake that transformed him from a struggling farmer into one of the wealthiest A&I agricultural landowners in Nebraska. The initial public offering was oversubscribed by 400%, reflecting investor confidence in the farmer-centered approach to agricultural technology that Jake and Maya had pioneered together. "I keep having to remind myself that this is really happening," Jake said during an interview with Forbes magazine about his unexpected transformation from debt-ridden farmer to tech millionaire. 9 years ago, I was considering bankruptcy, and now I'm being asked to ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. The IPO ceremony was a surreal experience for Jake, who found himself standing on the trading floor in a borrowed suit, surrounded by investment bankers and venture capitalists who treated him like a celebrity. Maya had insisted that he share the honor of ringing the opening bell, recognizing that their success had been genuinely collaborative from the very beginning. "None of this would have happened without Jake's willingness to teach me about farming and trust me with his equipment," Maya said during her remarks to the assembled crowd of investors and media representatives. "Our technology works because it was built on a foundation of genuine respect for farmer expertise." The wealth from the IPO allowed Jake to expand his philanthropic work significantly, transforming the Rodriguez Foundation into a major force for rural development and agricultural innovation. He purchased additional farmland not for personal expansion, but to create demonstration sites where emerging farmers could learn to integrate traditional practices with modern technology. "Money is just a tool," Jake explained to a group of agricultural journalists visiting his expanded operation. "The real value of our success is the opportunity to create more partnerships like the one Maya and I built together, showing other farmers that they don't have to choose between tradition and innovation." The foundation's work attracted attention from international development agencies, leading to partnerships with organizations working to improve food security in developing countries. Jake found himself traveling to places he'd never imagined visiting, sharing his experience with subsistence farmers in Africa and Asia who were facing challenges similar to those he'd encountered in Nebraska. "The principles are the same everywhere," Jake observed during a visit to smallholder farms in Kenya. "Farmers need technology that enhances their knowledge and skills rather than replacing them. The specific tools might be different, but the approach to collaboration between farmers and innovators is universal." These international experiences deepened Jake's understanding of global agriculture while reinforcing his commitment to ensuring that technological development served rural communities rather than displacing them. He began advocating for international policies that required technology companies to demonstrate farmer partnerships before receiving development funding. Maya's company had become a model for responsible technological development, with competitors attempting to replicate their farmer-centered approach, while often missing the authentic relationship building that made their collaboration successful. The company's continued growth attracted acquisition offers from major technology corporations, but Maya maintained independence to preserve their core mission. "We've proven that you can build a successful technology company while genuinely serving the communities you're trying to help," Maya explained during a conference presentation about sustainable business models. "The key is treating farmers as partners rather than customers, recognizing that they possess knowledge that can't be replicated in corporate research labs." Jake's role had evolved beyond agriculture into broader discussions about rural economic development and the future of small-town America. He spoke at conferences about entrepreneurship, served on federal advisory committees about rural policy, and consulted with other technology companies seeking to build authentic relationships with agricultural communities. "What Maya taught me is that innovation happens when different types of expertise come together with mutual respect," Jake said during a keynote address at the Rural Economic Development Summit. "Farmers have incredible knowledge about land management, weather patterns, and sustainable practices, but we need partners who understand technology and business development to help us scale those insights." The success of their partnership had inspired other collaborations between farmers and technology developers, creating a movement toward more participatory innovation in agriculture. Universities began requiring student projects to include farmer partnerships. Venture capital firms started prioritizing agricultural technology companies with demonstrated farmer involvement, and government agencies redesigned funding programs to emphasize community collaboration. Jake and Maya's partnership has fundamentally changed how we think about agricultural research and development, explained Dr. Amanda Foster from the National Agricultural Innovation Institute. Their model has become the gold standard for ethical technology development in rural communities. The 10th anniversary of their first meeting brought national media attention as journalists sought to understand how a chance encounter between a struggling farmer and a curious researcher had transformed into one of the most successful agricultural technology partnerships in American history. Documentary filmmakers, book authors, and business school case study writers all sought access to their story. The most important thing people need to understand, Jake reflected during an anniversary interview, is that this wasn't some grand strategic plan. It was just two people who were curious about each other's knowledge and willing to learn together. The success came from genuine collaboration, not from trying to exploit each other's expertise. Maya's company had expanded into dozens of countries, but every new market entry followed the same pattern of finding local farmer partners who could teach the company about regional conditions and needs. This approach had created a global network of farmer innovators who shared knowledge and best practices across continents. What started as a single partnership in Nebraska has become a worldwide community of farmers and researchers working together to address food security challenges, Maya said during the anniversary celebration. Jake's willingness to share his knowledge and trust in our collaboration created a model that's now being replicated everywhere we work. The anniversary also marked the launch of the Rodriguez Patel Institute for Agricultural Innovation, a research center located on Jake's original farm that brought together farmers, engineers, and social scientists to study collaborative approaches to technology development. The institute became a destination for international visitors seeking to understand how traditional agricultural knowledge could be integrated with modern technology. This institute represents everything we've learned about the importance of place-based innovation, Jake explained during the opening ceremony. You can't develop effective agricultural technology without understanding the specific conditions where it will be used, and you can't understand those conditions without working closely with the farmers who know the land. The Institute's first major research project involved documenting traditional farming practices from around the world and exploring how they could be enhanced with modern technology while preserving their cultural significance. The work attracted funding from major foundations and government agencies interested in promoting sustainable agricultural development. Dr. Carlos Mendoza, the Institute's director, explained their mission during an international conference on agricultural innovation. What Jake Rodriguez and Maya Patel demonstrated is that the most effective innovations emerge from the intersection of traditional knowledge and modern technology. Our research focuses on understanding how to create more partnerships that honor both types of expertise. End quote. As Jake looked across fields that now served as living laboratories for agricultural innovation while still producing crops that fed families around the world, he reflected on the unexpected journey that had transformed his understanding of farming, technology, and community development. The woman who had struggled to operate his tractor had become not just a business partner, but a catalyst for changes that extended far beyond anything either of them could have imagined. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd said no when Maya asked to use my tractor, Jake mused during a quiet moment between meetings with international visitors. How many opportunities do we miss because we're too cautious to help someone learn something new? Their partnership had proven that the future of agriculture depended not on choosing between tradition and innovation, but on finding ways to combine them through genuine collaboration and mutual respect. Jake's willingness to share his knowledge and equipment with a curious stranger had created ripple effects that touched farmers, researchers, and communities around the world. The success of their collaboration continued to inspire new partnerships between farmers and technology developers, creating a movement toward more inclusive and participatory innovation in agriculture. Their story had become a symbol of how individual relationships built on trust and shared learning could create changes that benefited entire industries and communities. As Jake prepared for another season of farming with technology that continued to evolve through ongoing collaboration with Maya's team, he understood that their partnership represented more than business success. It had become a demonstration of how innovation thrived when it emerged from genuine understanding between people with different types of expertise who were willing to learn from each other and build something together that neither could have created alone. The 5th year of their partnership brought unexpected opportunities when the Department of Agriculture selected Jake's farm as a demonstration site for a new federal initiative promoting sustainable agriculture technology. The designation came with significant funding for research and education programs, but also increased scrutiny from government officials and academic researchers who wanted to understand how their farmer-technology collaboration model could be replicated across different regions and farming systems. Dr. Patricia Webb, the lead researcher for the federal program, arrived at Jake's farm on a crisp October morning with a team of graduate students and extension specialists who had been studying their partnership for months through academic papers and conference presentations. Jake found himself in the unusual position of hosting distinguished visitors who treated his farming operation as a case study worthy of detailed analysis and documentation. "What we're seeing here," Dr. Webb explained to her research team as they toured Jake's enhanced equipment barn, "represents a fundamental shift in how agricultural innovation happens. Instead of technology being developed in corporate laboratories and then marketed to farmers, we have an example of technology emerging from genuine farmer-researcher collaboration." End quote. Jake Listine Hash, a struggling farmer, lets a woman use his tractor unaware she's launching a rural tech startup. Jake Rodriguez's farm hadn't turned a profit in 3 years when the woman in the rental car pulled up to his gate on that dusty September morning. His crops were failing, his equipment was breaking down, and the bank letters were piling up on his kitchen table. He had no idea that letting this stranger borrow his old tractor would transform not just his struggling operation, but the entire future of farming technology. She stalled his machine 3 times, asked questions that seemed impossible to answer, then vanished without explanation. But when she returned months later with investors and a prototype that could change everything, Jake discovered that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships can bridge the gap between tradition and innovation, between survival and success. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun cast long shadows across Jake Rodriguez's drought-stricken fields as he surveyed the damage that 3 consecutive seasons of poor weather had inflicted on his family's century-old farm in rural Gray, Nebraska. The corn stalks stood barely waist-high, their leaves brown and curled despite his best efforts to coax life from soil that seemed determined to reject everything he planted. His grandfather's words echoed in his memory as he walked the fence line, checking for breaks that he couldn't afford to repair properly. "The land will provide if you know how to listen to what it needs." But lately, Jake felt like he'd lost the ability to hear whatever the land was trying to tell him. At 34, Jake had inherited more than just the 800-acre spread that had supported 3 generations of Rodriguez men. He'd also inherited debt that grew larger each season, equipment that broke down with increasing frequency, and the weight of expectations from a community that had watched his family succeed for decades. His father had passed away 5 years earlier, leaving Jake to navigate the complexities of modern farming without the guidance that previous generations had relied upon, and every decision felt like it carried the potential for catastrophic failure. The sound of a car engine approaching broke through his morning contemplation, and Jake looked up to see a small sedan making its way down the gravel road that led to his farmhouse. The vehicle was clearly a rental, its pristine exterior standing out against the dusty landscape like a business card in a toolbox. Jake wiped his hands on his work jeans and walked toward the house, curious about who might be visiting his remote operation at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. The woman who emerged from the sedan was probably in her early 30s. With shoulder-length black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and clothing that suggested she'd made some effort to dress appropriately for a farm visit while still maintaining a professional appearance. She wore dark jeans that looked new, boots that had never seen actual farm work, and a button-down shirt that was clean enough to suggest she'd changed clothes specifically for this meeting. "Mr. Rodriguez?" she called out as she approached, extending her hand with the confident gesture of someone accustomed to introducing herself to strangers. "I'm Maya Patel. I called yesterday about possibly renting some equipment for a research project." Jake remembered the phone call, though he'd been distracted by a broken irrigation pump and hadn't paid careful attention to the details. A woman had explained that she was conducting agricultural research in the area and needed access to farming equipment for field testing, offering to pay daily rental fees that would help with his immediate cash flow problems. "Right, the tractor rental," Jake said, shaking her hand and noting the firm grip that suggested strength despite her academic appearance. "I have to warn you, the equipment isn't exactly state-of-the-art. Most of it's been in my family for longer than I've been alive." Maya's smile was genuine and carried a hint of excitement that seemed disproportionate to the prospect of operating decades-old farm machinery. "Actually, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I need to test some concepts with the kind of equipment that most farmers actually use, not the expensive new models that only large commercial operations can afford. As they walked toward the equipment barn, Jake found himself curious about Maya's background and what kind of research required hands-on experience with farming equipment. She asked detailed questions about his operation, the challenges he faced with weather and soil conditions, and the economic pressures that made it difficult to invest in newer technology. "How long have you been farming this land?" Maya asked as Jake pulled back the sliding door to reveal his collection of tractors, implements, and machinery in various states of repair. "My whole life, really," Jake replied, running his hand along the fender of his main tractor, a 1987 John Deere that had been his father's pride and joy. "My grandfather bought this land in 1952. My father expanded the operation in the 80s, and I've been trying to keep it all together since he passed." Maya examined the tractor with intense interest, walking around it slowly and taking notes on a tablet that she pulled from her shoulder bag. She asked about engine specifications, hydraulic systems, and the types of implements the tractor could operate. Questions that suggested a technical background that seemed unusual for someone conducting agricultural research. "Would it be possible for me to operate this today?" Maya asked, gesturing toward the John Deere. "I'd be happy to pay the daily rate we discussed, and I promise to be careful with your equipment." Jake hesitated, not because he doubted Maya's ability to pay, but because he'd never let a complete stranger operate his primary tractor without supervision. The machine was essential to his operation, and any damage could create problems he couldn't afford to address. However, the rental income would help with his immediate expenses, and Maya seemed sincere about her research needs. "I'll need to give you a quick orientation," Jake said finally. "This old girl has some quirks that aren't obvious from the outside, and I'd rather spend a few minutes explaining them than have you get stuck in the middle of the field." For the next hour, Jake walked Maya through the tractor's operation, explaining the clutch system that required more finesse than modern equipment, the hydraulic controls that occasionally stuck in cold weather, and the proper procedures for starting the engine that had become increasingly temperamental over the past 2 seasons. Maya listened with focused attention, asking clarifying questions and taking detailed notes that suggested she was absorbing information far beyond what most equipment renters would need. When Maya climbed into the operator's seat and attempted to start the tractor, Jake immediately understood that despite her obvious intelligence and careful attention to his instructions, she had limited experience with actual farm equipment. She stalled the engine 3 times in quick succession, each attempt resulting in the grinding sound of an improperly engaged clutch that made Jake wince with sympathetic pain for his aging machinery. "Take your time," Jake called up to her, fighting the urge to climb into the cab and demonstrate the proper technique himself. "The clutch on this model takes some getting used to. Try letting it out more slowly and getting it a little more throttle before you release the brake." Maya's 4th attempt was successful, and the tractor lurched forward with the jerky motion of someone still learning to coordinate clutch, throttle, and steering. Jake watched nervously as she navigated the farmyard, clearly concentrating intensely on the basic mechanics of operation, while trying to avoid the various obstacles that cluttered the area around his barn. Despite her obvious inexperience, Maya demonstrated a determination and patience that impressed Jake. Instead of becoming frustrated with her initial failures, she asked thoughtful questions about the relationship between engine speed and hydraulic pressure, the optimal ground speed for different field conditions, and the way that soil moisture affected traction and steering control. "This is exactly what I needed to understand," Maya said as she brought the tractor to a careful stop after successfully completing several circuits around the farmyard. "The relationship between operator skill and equipment performance is much more complex than I realized." Jake found himself curious about the nature of Maya's research and what insights she hoped to gain from struggling with his old tractor. Her questions suggested a technical background that went beyond traditional agricultural training, and her focus on the interaction between human operators and mechanical systems seemed unusual for someone brain. Conducting farming research. "What exactly are you studying?" Jake asked as Maya climbed down from the tractor cab, clearly pleased with her progress despite the initial difficulties. Maya's expression shifted slightly, and Jake caught a hint of the careful consideration that people showed when they were deciding how much information to share about projects that weren't ready for public discussion. "I'm developing technology that could help farmers get more productivity from existing equipment," she said finally. "But I need to understand how real farming operations work before I can design solutions that will actually be useful." Over the following weeks, Maya returned to Jake's farm 3 times a week, gradually improving her tractor operation skills while conducting what appeared to be detailed measurements and observations of field conditions, equipment performance, and operational efficiency. She brought increasingly sophisticated monitoring equipment, attaching sensors to the tractor that measured everything from fuel consumption to hydraulic pressure, while asking Jake countless questions about his decision-making processes during field operations. Jake found himself looking forward to Maya's visits, partly because her rental payments provided welcome relief from his financial pressures, but also because her outsider's perspective on farming operations challenged him to think more analytically about practices he'd always taken for granted. She asked why he chose particular field patterns, how he determined optimal planting depths, and what factors influenced his timing for various operations throughout the growing season. "You make hundreds of decisions every day that require incredible technical knowledge," Maya observed during one of their conversations. "You're constantly processing information about soil conditions, weather patterns, equipment performance, and crop development. Then, translating that analysis into precise mechanical operations. It's like being a pilot, engineer, and scientist all at the same time." Jake had never thought of farming in such analytical terms, but Maya's description made him realize that his work did require a complex integration of technical skills, environmental awareness, and economic calculation that he'd learned to perform instinctively over decades of experience. Her academic perspective helped him recognize the sophistication of knowledge that he'd always considered basic farming competence. As the weeks passed, Maya's questions became increasingly specific and technical, focusing on the challenges of operating key equipment across varying field conditions and the ways that experienced farmers adapted their techniques to optimize performance. She seemed particularly interested in the decision-making processes that Jake used to adjust his approach based on real-time feedback from the machinery and the land. "When you feel the tractor starting to slip in soft soil," Maya asked during one of their sessions, "what exactly are you responding to? Is it engine sound, steering feedback, visual cues from the implement, or something else?" Jake struggled to articulate responses to questions about skills he'd developed through years of practical experience, knowledge that existed more in his hands and instincts than in his conscious mind. Maya's inquiries forced him to analyze his own expertise in ways that revealed the complexity of decisions he made automatically, often without realizing the sophistication of the problem-solving processes he'd internalized. "It's mostly feel," Jake explained, trying to translate intuitive knowledge into words that would make sense to someone approaching farming from an academic perspective. "You learn to read the machine's responses, the way it reacts to different conditions, and you adjust your approach based on feedback that you're not even consciously aware of processing." Maya's visits continued through the fall harvest season, with her gradually taking on more complex operations as her skills improved and Jake's confidence in her abilities grew. She documented everything meticulously, creating detailed records of field conditions, equipment performance, and operational outcomes that went far beyond what Jake had ever considered necessary for successful farming. Then, without explanation, Maya stopped coming. Jake waited for her usual Tuesday morning visit, then checked his phone for messages that might explain her absence. When Thursday passed without contact, he began to worry that something had happened to her, or that his equipment had somehow failed to meet her research needs. A week later, Jake called the number Maya had given him, but received only a generic voicemail message that provided no information about her whereabouts or plans. Her sudden disappearance left him feeling oddly disappointed, not just because he would miss the rental income, but because he'd enjoyed their conversations and the fresh perspective she'd brought to his daily operations. Months passed with no word from Maya, and Jake gradually returned to his normal routine of struggling with equipment breakdowns, weather challenges, and financial pressures that seemed to intensify with each passing season. The winter was particularly harsh, with heating bills that strained his budget and equipment maintenance costs that forced him to choose between necessary repairs and basic living expenses. By early spring, Jake had nearly forgotten about Maya's research project when he received a phone call that caught him completely off guard. Maya's voice was excited and slightly breathless, as if she was calling while rushing between meetings or catching flights. "Jake, it's Maya Patel. I know it's been months since we talked, but I wondered if you might be interested in hosting a demonstration for some potential investors. I've been working on something based on what I learned at your farm, and I think you might find it interesting." Jake felt a mixture of curiosity and wariness, uncertain about what kind of demonstration Maya had in mind and whether her project might somehow interfere with his spring planting schedule. However, his financial situation had worsened over the winter, and any opportunity for additional income deserved consideration. "What kind of demonstration?" Jake asked, trying to balance enthusiasm with appropriate caution. "I'll explain everything when I get there," Maya replied. "Would next Tuesday work? I'll bring lunch for everyone, and I promise the presentation won't take more than a few hours." Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that made farming seem like the best profession in the world. Clear skies and moderate temperatures that promised ideal conditions for field work. Jake spent the morning completing routine maintenance on his planting equipment, wondering what Maya had developed during her months of absence and whether her project would have any relevance to his practical farming needs. At precisely 11 o'clock, a convoy of vehicles turned into Jake's driveway, led by Maya's familiar rental sedan, but followed by 2 SUVs and a pickup truck that carried what appeared to be electronic equipment, covered by protective tarps. Jake counted 8 people emerging from the vehicles, most wearing business attire that seemed impractical for a farm visit, though Maya had learned to dress appropriately for outdoor demonstrations. "Jake!" Maya called out as she approached, her excitement obvious despite the professional demeanor she maintained in front of her companions. "Thank you so much for hosting this. I'd like you to meet some people who are very interested in what we've been working on." Maya introduced Jake to a group that included venture capital investors, agricultural technology specialists, and engineers who had collaborated on developing what she described as precision farming solutions for traditional operations. The terminology was unfamiliar, but Jake recognized the enthusiasm of people who believed they had discovered something significant. "What Maya has created," explained one of the investors, a woman in her 50s wearing a business suit that probably cost more than Jake's monthly income, "is technology that can transform any existing tractor into a smart farming platform, providing real-time data analysis and automated guidance systems without requiring farmers to purchase new equipment." Jake felt his skepticism rising as he listened to descriptions of technological solutions that sounded both expensive and complicated. Exactly the kind of innovations that agricultural companies marketed to farmers, while ignoring the practical realities of rural operations and limited budgets. However, Maya's understanding of his actual working conditions suggested that her approach might be different from typical agricultural technology development. "Let me show you what we've built," Maya said, leading the group toward the equipment barn where Jake's tractors waited for the beginning of planting season. The system is designed to work with existing machinery, enhancing human decision-making rather than replacing farmer expertise. Maya and her team spent the next hour installing what appeared to be a collection of sensors, cameras, and computing devices on Jake's primary tractor, transforming the familiar machine into something that looked like a hybrid between traditional farming equipment and a sophisticated research platform. The modifications were extensive, but didn't require permanent alterations to the tractor's basic systems. The technology monitors soil conditions, seed placement, and environmental factors in real time, Maya explained, as Jake examined the installed equipment. But instead of making decisions automatically, he provides farmers with enhanced information to support the kind of expert judgment that you already use every day. As Jake climbed into the tractor cab, now equipped with multiple screens and interfaces that displayed information about field conditions, weather patterns, and optimal operating parameters, he realized that Maya had been studying his farming practices to develop technology that augmented rather than replaced human expertise. The demonstration that followed was unlike anything Jake had experienced in 20 years of farming. The enhanced tractor provided constant feedback about soil compaction, moisture levels, and seed placement accuracy, while offering suggestions for adjustments based on real-time analysis of field data, conditions, and weather forecasts. "This is incredible," Jake said, as he guided the tractor through a test planting pattern, watching screens that showed him information about his field that he'd never been able to access before. "It's like having an agronomist, meteorologist, and engineer riding along to help with every decision." The investors watched the demonstration with obvious excitement, asking technical questions about data processing capabilities, user interface design, and the economic benefits that farmers could expect from adopting Maya's technology. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and Jake found himself caught up in the possibility that innovations developed on his farm might benefit agricultural operations across the country. "The brilliant thing about Maya's approach," one of the venture capital representatives explained to Jake, "is that it doesn't require farmers to abandon existing equipment or change fundamental practices. Instead, it enhances the expertise that experienced farmers already possess." As the demonstration concluded and Maya's team began packing their equipment, one of the investors approached Jake with a proposal that seemed almost too good to be true. The venture capital firm wanted to establish a permanent testing facility on Jake's farm, providing him with compensation for hosting ongoing technology development, while giving Maya's team access to real farming conditions for continued product refinement. "We'd like to offer you a partnership agreement," the investor explained, handing Jake a folder of documents that outlined terms for collaboration that would provide him with steady income, access to cutting-edge farming technology, and eventual profit sharing from successful product commercialization. Jake spent the following week reviewing the partnership proposal with a lawyer who specialized in agricultural contracts, trying to understand the implications of becoming involved with a technology startup while maintaining ownership and control of his farming operation. The terms were generous and seemed designed to protect his interests, while providing Maya's team with the testing environment they needed for continued development. The decision to accept the partnership transformed Jake's farm from a struggling family operation into a showcase for agricultural innovation that attracted visitors from across the country. Maya's team established a permanent research facility in his converted equipment barn, bringing steady income and access to technological resources that revolutionized his farming efficiency and profitability. Over the following months, Jake found himself serving as both a test pilot for new technology and an ambassador for innovations that could benefit farmers facing similar challenges. He traveled to agricultural conferences, participated in technology demonstrations, and shared his experience with other farmers who were considering adopting precision agriculture solutions. "What makes this technology special," Jake explained to a group of farmers visiting his operation, "is that it was developed by someone who took the time to understand how farming actually works, rather than trying to impose solutions from the outside." Maya's company grew rapidly, attracting additional investment and expanding their product line to serve different types of farming operations. However, she maintained her focus on developing solutions that enhanced farmer expertise rather than replacing human decision-making, an approach that set her company apart from competitors who emphasized automation over collaboration. Jake's partnership with Maya's startup provided him with financial stability that allowed him to pay off inherited debts, invest in necessary equipment upgrades, and establish savings for future expansion. More importantly, the collaboration had given him confidence in his farming expertise and recognition that his practical knowledge represented valuable intellectual capital. "You taught me that the most sophisticated farming decisions happen in the minds of experienced farmers, Maya said during one of their regular planning meetings. My job was to create technology that could support and enhance that expertise, not replace it. The success of their partnership attracted attention from major agricultural companies, leading to licensing agreements that provided both Jake and Maya with long-term financial security, while ensuring that their innovations would benefit farmers across multiple continents. Jake's farm had become a model for how traditional operations could integrate advanced technology without losing the human expertise that made farming successful. 2 years after Maya's first visit to his farm, Jake stood in the same field where he'd questioned his ability to continue farming, now watching automated planting equipment that responded to his expert guidance while providing information that enhanced every decision he made. The transformation seemed almost impossible, the journey from struggling farmer to technology ambassador that began with a simple act of neighborly assistance. Sometimes, Jake reflected, as he watched Maya demonstrate their latest innovations to another group of potential investors, the most important thing you can do is help someone learn something new, even when you have no idea where that learning might lead. Maya's startup had become a major force in agricultural technology, with Jake serving as both a testing partner and public spokesperson for innovations that bridged the gap between traditional farming wisdom and modern technological capabilities. Their collaboration proved that the most effective agricultural solutions emerged from genuine partnerships between farmers and technologists who respected each other's expertise. The woman who had stalled his tractor 3 times on that dusty September morning had transformed not only Jake's farming operation, but the entire landscape of agricultural technology development. Her patient approach to learning from experienced farmers had created innovations that enhanced human expertise rather than replacing it, establishing a new model for how technology companies could serve agricultural communities. Jake's story became a case study in business schools and agricultural programs, demonstrating how individual acts of generosity and patience could lead to partnerships that benefited entire industries. His willingness to share his knowledge and equipment with a curious stranger had created opportunities that neither of them could have imagined during their first conversation. The success of Maya's company and Jake's transformation from struggling farmer to technology ambassador proved that innovation thrived when it emerged from genuine understanding of practical challenges rather than theoretical solutions imposed from outside. Their partnership had created technology that enhanced farming expertise while providing economic opportunities for rural communities. As Jake looked across fields that now produced record harvests with the support of technology developed through his collaboration with Maya, he understood that the most valuable investments were often those made in people and relationships rather than equipment and machinery. His decision to help a stranger learn to operate his tractor had created returns that extended far beyond anything he could have calculated or anticipated. Maya's success had validated Jake's farming expertise while providing him with resources to build the kind of operation his grandfather had envisioned when he first purchased the land. Their partnership demonstrated that traditional agricultural wisdom and modern technology could enhance each other when brought together through genuine collaboration and mutual respect. The 3rd year of their partnership brought unexpected challenges that tested both the technology and the relationship Jake had built with Maya's expanding company. A severe drought struck the region, creating conditions that pushed their precision farming systems beyond anything they had encountered during the development phase. Jake found himself serving not just as a test partner, but as a crisis manager, helping Maya's engineering team understand how experienced farmers adapted to extreme weather conditions. "The sensors are giving us data we've never seen before," Maya explained during an emergency planning session in Jake's kitchen, surrounded by laptop computers displaying real-time soil moisture readings that painted a grim picture of the growing crisis. "But we need your expertise to interpret what this information means for practical farming decisions." Jake studied the data streaming across multiple screens, recognizing patterns that the sophisticated monitoring systems could detect, but couldn't fully understand without human context. The technology could measure soil moisture levels with incredible precision, but it took his decades of experience to recognize that certain field areas would respond differently to irrigation, based on subtle variations in soil composition that weren't captured by the sensors. "Here's what the computers aren't telling you," Jake said, pointing to areas on the digital field maps where sensor readings appeared uniform, but his practical knowledge suggested otherwise. This section along the creek bottom will hold moisture longer than the readings indicate, because there's a clay layer about 18 inches down that the sensors can't detect. But over here, where the soil looks similar on your data, the drainage is completely different because of changes in the subsoil that happened when my grandfather leveled this field in the 60s. Maya's engineering team listened with fascination as Jake explained the invisible complexities of land that had been farmed for generations. Knowledge that existed in the memories and experiences of people who had worked the same fields through multiple weather cycles. His insights revealed gaps in their data collection that no amount of sophisticated monitoring could address without the context provided by long-term human observation. The drought crisis forced rapid innovation in their technology platform, as Maya's team worked around the clock to integrate Jake's qualitative knowledge with their quantitative data systems. They developed new interfaces that allowed farmers to input contextual information about field history, soil variations, and local weather patterns that enhanced the accuracy of automated recommendations. What we're building now, Maya explained to a group of agricultural extension agents who had come to observe their drought management strategies, is technology that learns from farmer expertise rather than trying to replace it. Jake's knowledge about this land represents decades of data that our sensors could never capture on their own. The enhanced system that emerged from the drought crisis proved more effective than either traditional farming methods or purely technological solutions could have achieved independently. Jake's yields that season exceeded those of neighboring farms by significant margins, despite weather conditions that devastated many operations in the region. The success during the drought attracted national attention to their partnership with agricultural journalists, university researchers, and government officials visiting Jake's farm to understand how precision technology and traditional farming knowledge could be integrated effectively. Jake found himself giving interviews and presentations that he never could have imagined when he was struggling to keep his operation solvent just a few years earlier. The key insight, Jake explained to a reporter from Agricultural Technology Today, is that good farming has always been about processing enormous amounts of information and making complex decisions based on incomplete data. What Maya's technology does is give us better information to work with, but the decision-making still requires human judgment and experience. Maya's company continued expanding, opening offices in 3 states and developing specialized versions of their technology for different types of farming operations. However, she maintained her commitment to farmer-centered design principles, insisting that all new products be tested extensively with working farmers before reaching the commercial market. Jake's role evolved from test partner to chief agricultural advisor, a position that involved traveling to other farms, consulting with product development teams, and serving as a bridge between the engineering staff and the farming community. The compensation from his advisory work, combined with the improved profitability of his own operation, had transformed his financial situation beyond anything he had dared hope for during the worst years of terror. His struggles. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life," Jake confided to Maya during one of their weekly planning meetings. 3 years ago, I was considering selling the farm because I couldn't make the mortgage payments. Now I'm advising technology companies and speaking at conferences about the future of agriculture. Maya smiled with the satisfaction of someone whose professional success had been built on genuine relationships rather than pure business calculation. "You earned every bit of this," she said. "Your willingness to share your knowledge and trust our partnership made everything else possible." The 4th year brought new challenges as Maya's company attracted acquisition offers from major agricultural corporations seeking to integrate their technology into existing product lines. The negotiations were complex, involving not just financial considerations, but questions about maintaining the farmer-focused approach that had made their innovations successful. Jake found himself playing an unexpected role in these discussions, as potential buyers recognized that his endorsement and continued involvement would be crucial for any successful acquisition. His practical credibility with the farming community represented a valuable asset that couldn't be replicated through marketing or corporate partnerships alone. "We want to make sure that any deal preserves what makes this technology special," Maya explained during a conference call with potential investors. Jake's input will be essential for evaluating whether proposed partnerships align with our core mission of enhancing farmer expertise rather than replacing it. The acquisition process revealed the extent to which Jake's partnership with Maya had transformed not just his own operation, but the broader landscape of agricultural technology development. Companies that had previously focused on automation and equipment replacement were now investing in platforms that enhanced human decision-making, following the model that Maya and Jake had pioneered. "What you two have accomplished," explained the lead negotiator for one of the interested companies, "has fundamentally changed how our industry thinks about the relationship between technology and farming. Expertise. Every major agricultural technology company is now trying to replicate your approach." The final acquisition agreement provided both Maya and Jake with financial security that exceeded their original partnership projections, while ensuring that their farmer-centered development philosophy would continue under new ownership. Jake retained his advisory role and maintained partial ownership of the intellectual property that had emerged from their collaboration. The success of their partnership inspired Jake to establish a consulting practice that helped other farmers evaluate and integrate new technologies into their operations. His unique combination of practical farming experience and technology industry knowledge made him a sought-after advisor for both agricultural producers and technology companies seeking to develop farmer-friendly innovations. "What I learned from working with Maya," Jake explained to a group of young farmers attending a technology adoption workshop, "is that the best innovations come from genuine collaboration between people who understand farming and people who understand technology. Neither perspective alone is sufficient for creating solutions that actually work in real farming conditions." Jake's consulting practice grew rapidly as farmers across the Midwest sought guidance for navigating the increasingly complex landscape of agricultural technology options. His reputation for practical advice and honest assessment of technology claims made him a trusted voice in discussions about precision agriculture adoption. The partnership with Maya had also strengthened Jake's connection to his family's farming legacy, as the financial stability and technological enhancements allowed him to implement conservation practices and long-term improvements that his grandfather and father had always envisioned. He installed cover crop systems, upgraded his soil health monitoring, and invested in sustainable farming practices that would benefit future generations. "My grandfather always said that good farming meant leaving the land better than you found it," Jake reflected during a farm tour for agricultural students. "The technology Maya developed has given me the tools to fulfill that responsibility while also building a profitable operation that can support my family." The influence of their collaboration extended beyond individual farming operations, as agricultural extension programs and university research initiatives adopted their model of farmer-researcher partnerships for developing practical innovations. Jake served on advisory boards for multiple academic institutions, helping to design programs that connected agricultural engineering students with working farmers. "The most important thing we can teach future agricultural innovators," Jake said during a presentation at the State University's Agricultural Engineering program, "is that good technology enhances human expertise rather than replacing it. The farmers who will be most successful with new innovations are those who understand both traditional practices and modern tools." Maya's company, now operating as a division of a major agricultural corporation, continued to expand internationally, adapting their technology platform for different crops, climates, and farming systems around the world. Jake occasionally traveled to international demonstrations, sharing his experience with farmers in other countries who were considering precision agriculture adoption. "The principles we developed here in Nebraska," Jake explained to a group of farmers in Brazil, "apply wherever people are trying to make good decisions about land management with incomplete information. The specific technology may be different, but the need for tools that enhance farmer judgment is universal." The recognition that came with their success brought speaking opportunities at major agricultural conferences, where Jake shared the stage with industry leaders, researchers, and policymakers discussing the future of farming technology. His presentations consistently emphasized the importance of maintaining farmer autonomy and expertise in technology development processes. Technology should make farmers better at farming, Jake said during his keynote address at the National Agricultural Technology Conference, not make farming easier for people who don't understand agriculture. The difference between those two approaches determines whether innovations actually benefit rural communities or just extract value from them. Jake's transformation from struggling farmer to technology advocate had inspired other agricultural producers to engage more actively with innovation development, leading to increased collaboration between farming communities and technology companies. His example demonstrated that farmers could be partners in technology creation, rather than passive consumers of products designed without their input. The financial success of his partnership with Maya enabled Jake to expand his farming operation, purchasing additional land that had become available when neighboring farmers retired. He implemented the technology platform across his enlarged operation, while maintaining the sustainable practices and community connections that had always characterized his family's approach to agriculture. Growth for its own sake was never the goal, Jake explained to a business journalist writing about successful agricultural partnerships. The goal was always to build an operation that could support my family while contributing positively to the community and the land. The technology partnership gave me the tools to achieve that vision. As Jake looked across fields that now encompassed nearly 1,500 acres, all managed with the precision technology that had emerged from his collaboration with Maya, he reflected on the unexpected journey that had transformed both his personal circumstances and his understanding of agriculture's future possibilities. The woman who had struggled to operate his tractor, that crock, September morning, had become not just a business partner, but a catalyst for changes that extended far beyond their individual success. Their collaboration had influenced agricultural technology development, inspired new models of farmer researcher partnerships, and demonstrated that innovation thrived when built on genuine understanding and mutual respect. Jake's story had become a model for agricultural technology adoption, studied in business schools and agricultural programs as an example of how individual relationships could create industry-wide changes. His willingness to share knowledge and trust in Maya's vision had generated outcomes that neither of them could have predicted during their first conversation. The success of their partnership validated Jake's belief that farming expertise represented valuable knowledge that deserved recognition and compensation rather than replacement by automated systems. His experience proved that technology could enhance traditional agricultural wisdom when developed through genuine collaboration with working farmers. The most important lesson from our partnership, Jake concluded during his final presentation of the year, is that innovation happens when people with different kinds of expertise trust each other enough to learn from each other. Maya taught me to think about farming in new ways, and I helped her understand what farmers actually need from technology. Neither of us could have achieved what we accomplished together working alone. The transformation of Jake's farm from struggling family operation to showcase for agricultural innovation represented more than individual success. It demonstrated how partnerships built on mutual respect and shared learning could create value that extended far beyond the original participants to benefit entire communities and industries. As Jake prepared for another season of farming with technology that had emerged from his collaboration with Maya, he understood that their partnership had proven that the future of agriculture would be shaped by those who could bridge the gap between traditional knowledge and modern innovation, creating solutions that honored both farming heritage and technological possibility.